Top 20 greatest players to play.
You think Karl Malone is?
Yeah.
But what about his off the court stuff? You know, does that factor in at all?
I really don't know a lot of off the court stuff.
He got a 13-year-old pregnant.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is NBA superstar Patrick Beverley learning about Karl Malone's weird case. And if you're watching this video and you know your lore, there's a good chance you already know about the 13-year-old incident. But what will always be crazy to me is those that have been around basketball for a long time still not knowing about Karl's weird case. He's a certified pedophile! And the reason so many people don't know about Karl Malone's freaky weird case is because the NBA and NBA media have constantly given him good attention. A few years ago, they just had this man at the Utah Jazz All-Star game. They be having him on interviews and wishing him happy birthday. And I get it. He's a pretty hard person to ignore. One of the top scorers of all time. Been to multiple finals. Has had an illustrious career. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't give a damn. I don't want no freak-a-link to be tied to my brand. He's bad for PR. And usually when people bring up Karl Malone, it's because they are severely uneducated about Karl Malone's past. Like take Richard Jefferson for example. This guy is hilarious. One of my favorite players turned media heads in recent memory. But he just had one of the dumbest takes I have ever seen on a podcast. Because the question came up of who was the greatest player to never win an NBA championship. And obviously names like Chris Paul, Tracy McGrady, Dominique Wilkins, Reggie Miller, Patrick Ewing come up. But then it came down to who had the better career, Charles Barkley or Karl Malone. And here's what Richard had to say.
The reason why I would pick Karl Malone over Charles is because the level of professionalism that Karl Malone always approached.
So he's saying one of his main points was the off-the-court stuff that Charles Barkley did. Now, Charles Barkley isn't a good person either, and RJ emphasizes that he wasn't much of a leader or a role model. Let's hear what he has to say about Karl Malone.
I'm saying Charles was a rebel. He's not a role model, so I'm not taking shots at him. But I'm saying when you look at a guy like Karl Malone, who trained for 8 hours a day, he played for 19 years, he was second in scoring, and if his body would have held up, he probably would have been the all-time leading scorer.
One more statistic, RJ. He got a 13-year-old pregnant, buddy. And honestly, this man just sucks as a human being. And I'm here to spread the truth about the things Karl has done. You are going down today, Mr. Malone. Now, first, I would like to point out his background for a second. His mama raised him and 8 other whole kids alone, while his father had a whole nother family and had absolutely nothing to do with Karl Malone's life. Now, I'm not trying to make any excuses for Mr. ADP over here, alright? I'm just giving you a little bit of foreshadowing, just so you know what's gonna happen later on in this video. Now, after high school, he went on to go to college, and we gotta keep in mind, folks, he's one of the top players in Louisiana, so he probably could have got anybody he wanted for real. But obviously, there's a problem with this. The young lady he slept with was a 13-year-old. Could have had all the hoes, but he went for the 13-year-old girl. Okay, bro. And what makes it even worse is that he got the girl pregnant. Now the story gets a little nastier because Gloria's parents didn't want to quote-unquote ruin Karl Malone's career. And also they thought to themselves, well, since he is going to be getting that NBA money soon, we should have enough money to help support our grandchild. So obviously they were in the mindset of let's get to that money, which is disgusting, but alright. So instead of going to jail, Karl goes to the NBA and things get so much stupider. Because once Karl Malone got to the NBA, he said, I'm out of here. And he denied paternity to the child, which led to a whole big old court case / lawsuit where all this information came out. And so in 1986, they took Karl to court to get at least $200 a week in child support. Now obviously $200 doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at today, it's about $586 a week that they were requesting. Now Malone didn't really respond, and the judge ruled him the father of the child and said, hey man, you're gonna have to pay these bills. Now Malone said, hey man, that's way too much freaking money for me to be paying. And so the court case went on for 3 years. And in that time span, Karl done made at least $3 million. But Karl refused to take a DNA test and said, that is not my baby. And eventually he reached a settlement with the Bell family for an undisclosed amount. Now years later, it's actually kind of crazy because his kid came out to be a young man by the name of Demetrius Bell, who was in the NFL. And here's how Demetrius Bell feels about Karl Malone. He said, I treat it as if my mother went to the sperm bank. I don't hate him for not being in my life. It made me a better person. So it seems like Demetrius was like, you know what, man? You're a freaked out individual. I don't even mind you not being my dad. And honestly, good choice, Demetrius. This man is a terrible person. And what's even crazier is when Demetrius Bell grew up and Karl Malone and him finally met up, Karl straight up told his son, yeah man, you too old for me to be your dad, bro. Like, you just gonna have to get it how you get it, bro. Like, I don't even know you. You're a grown man. You're not my child. And Demetrius was like, yeah, all right, bro. Like, you do you. Now, Karl does reflect on the situation and says, oh, I was wrong and I'm sorry, but like, all right, bro, like, let's be for real. It was clear that you did not want to have any type of contact with that child. And it gets even crazier because this man is a master level deadbeat father. Because when this man was 17, he ended up getting another girl pregnant. Now this one isn't as bad as the other one, but regardless, he wanted nothing to do with those kids. But it did not matter. There was no more hiding, Karl. A news outlet by the name of The Globe dropped a whole story about his paternity test cases. And it turns out he was the father of twins, Daryl and Cheryl Ford. Now, I guess for Karl to not look like such a bad guy, he ended up reaching out to these kids, but they were about like 17 by then.
When Cheryl Ford and her twin brother Daryl were born to Benita Ford 22 years ago in Louisiana, their dad, Karl Malone, was at the hospital. Then, just weeks after graduating from high school, he vanished from their lives. Cheryl did not discover that Malone was her father until she was 8 years old, only after a lawsuit filed by Benita Ford was settled out of court. From that point, Cheryl grew up a Karl Malone fan and enjoyed the 4-hour drive from Louisiana to Dallas to see him play. But Cheryl always left those games heartbroken.
It was fun until after the game we went down to try to get his attention when he didn't say anything.
The bus was parked in the back and we would always stand at the fence and she would look down at him and she would say, Karl, you know, she would just holler his name and stuff and he wouldn't look up.
I yelled to him and he acted like he didn't hear me, so I said, I just called him a buster. So that's the way I felt at the time.
During the 1998 finals, Malone was portrayed during a television interview as a strong family man. And Cheryl, who had been cheering for her dad during that series against the Bulls, was wounded.
He up here being nominated as the father of the year or whatever, and he got 2 kids that down in Louisiana that he does nothing for. And then we sit up and see, you know, the other kids on the TV, and I mean, it hurt a little bit, but what can we do about it? Nothing. So we just watched it, and that's all we could do.
I'm not gonna lie, y'all. This one got me choked up a little bit. I mean, speaking from personal experience, not having your dad consistently present in your life does definitely kind of suck because you do miss out on a lot of experiences that a lot of people get to have. But I think it's even more emphasized when you do have a father and he wants pretty much nothing to do with you. Even in Cheryl's case, when your dad's freaking famous and in the finals being portrayed as some family man, that had to be a direct punch in the gut, bro. It kind of gets even weirder because after the article was released, this is when Karl Malone was like, oh, let me walk into you guys' life now. Let me go ahead and be the dad that I wasn't able to be. And it kind of makes you question on if he's actually being real about it or not.
It was very shocking. I mean, we got this man that we didn't know. So, and he just all of a sudden decided to just want to come and talk to us.
And I take responsibility for it, but sometimes you don't take them right then. Sometimes you take them later, and it don't make you a bad person.
That was the first time he got involved, really got involved in their life. Yeah, that's the first time he ever spoken to him. That's the first time he ever said anything to him.
Did you forgive him immediately?
No.
How long did it take you?
It maybe took a couple of years. I mean, we forgive, but we don't forget, so that's just the way it goes.
And since then, I guess they've had a pretty solid relationship. And Malone says he's happy to be with his kids and grandkids. Now, for those that don't know about Big Cheryl, 4-time WNBA All-Star and a 3-time champion. She did what her dad could never do. Get the chip. Karl, you are a sick bastard. Now, obviously, this could go back to his childhood and him not having a father himself. But even then, despite you being a deadbeat, you are still EDP levels of weird. And even after him just being a bad father and a certified pedo, he was also just a weird human and might be on Frieza levels of racist. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you heard that correctly. Karl Malone is a deadbeat, a pedo, and now a racist. Specifically to Kobe's wife, bro. He was harassing Vanessa Bryant. In 2004, when he was on the Lakers, Malone was walking in with cowboy hats and boots at the Staples Center. He was one of them country boys. And Vanessa saw the fit. She was like, oh, that's funny. Let me talk to him. And she said, hey, cowboy, what are you hunting? And Karl said, I'm hunting for little Mexican girls. Now let's remember, ladies and gentlemen, Vanessa is of Mexican descent, so he said the most out-of-pocket thing he could have thought of. And mind you, she is married to Kobe Bean Bryant. So obviously Kobe was taken aback by this weirdo.
The feud between Kobe Bryant and Karl Malone just took that turn into that real bad neighborhood, personal street. After nearly a week of Bryant questioning Malone's indecision about returning to the Lakers and Malone being ticked off about it, Kobe lowered the boom Sunday, saying that Malone came on to his wife last month before a game. According to Bryant, he called Malone and told him to stay away from his wife after Malone allegedly made several inappropriate comments to Kobe's wife, Vanessa, that she said made her uncomfortable.
Is there any way that you can see to mend this problem?
No, not on a personal relationship. I mean, when all that stuff happened, I mean, we kept our mouths shut. It is what it is. I mean, you know, you let him and, you know, his family deal with that situation or whatever. And, you know, we just kept our mouths shut. And I just came here to work the next day, just doing what we have to do. I didn't tell anybody about it because it's, you know, nobody's business. You know, if Mitch and Buster them felt like it was right for the team for him to come back and play for us, then I just have to be a bigger man and just accept him on a business level as far as being a teammate and embrace him here in this organization. That's why, you know, I just kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to affect anybody else's decision as far as him coming back and playing or not.
Kobe added he was like a mentor, like a brother to me. So when something like that happens, you're upset, you're hurt. And obviously this strained him and Kobe's relationship for a long time. Rest in peace, Kobe. But this all goes back to when Pat Bev was surprised about Karl being a weirdo, and RJ speaking on how Karl Malone was a role model and a leader and an elite player. This man is an icky individual. Don't be giving this man no more of a platform, wishing him happy birthday, saying, hey, come to the All-Star game, hey, come commentate. No, I don't want to see this man's face ever again. And I'm not gonna lie, the moral of the story here is don't look up to these famous people, man. I know there was some kid growing up in the 80s thinking, I want to be just like Karl Malone. Trust me, kid. No, you don't. And you can always look for inspiration, but remember to do your best and stay on your own journey. And with that being said, thank y'all so much for the support. I'm very blessed just to even be in this position. And thank y'all so much for 1,000 subscribers. And remember, man, to always stay blessed.